Ambassador Kate Sullivan walked through the massive halls of the Zephyrian High Council building on Nexus Prime. Her boots echoed against the crystal floors as alien guards watched her with hostile eyes. She had traveled across the galaxy to deliver one final message from humanity to the Galactic Empire that had been attacking human colonies for 8 long years. The council chamber was enormous, with walls that stretched up toward a domed ceiling covered in strange, glowing symbols. Hundreds of Zephyrian nobles sat in floating chairs, arranged in circles around a central platform where Kate now stood alone. Their skin was pale blue, and their eyes were large and black. They looked at her like she was some kind of interesting insect. Emperor Vashatar sat on a throne made from what looked like living metal that shifted and moved around his body. He was twice the size of a normal Zephyrian and wore a crown that floated above his head without touching it. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the chamber without any need for technology to make it louder. Kate activated her translation device and began to speak. Her words were translated into the Zephyrian language instantly, so everyone could understand her. She had practiced this speech many times during the long journey to their capital world. I come here today as a representative of all humanity to deliver a final message from President Ryan Carter and the United Human Colonies. For 8 years, your empire has attacked our worlds and killed our people. You have ignored every attempt we have made to negotiate peace. You have rejected every treaty we have offered. Today, that ends. Several Zephyrian nobles began laughing and making rude gestures at Kate, but she continued speaking without stopping. Humanity demands that all Zephyrian military forces withdraw from human-claimed territory within 72 hours. All prisoners taken from human worlds must be returned unharmed. All stolen resources and technology must be returned to their rightful owners. If these demands are not met, humanity will consider the Zephyrian Empire to be in a state of total war with our species. The laughter in the chamber grew louder and more mocking. Emperor Vashatar raised one of his 6 arms and the chamber fell silent instantly. "Little human," he said in a voice that dripped with contempt, "your species controls 23 small systems in a remote corner of the galaxy. My empire spans 847 systems and commands the loyalty of dozens of alien species. You come here and make demands like you have some kind of power to threaten us." Kate stood perfectly still and waited for him to finish speaking. "Your colonies exist only because we have not yet decided to sweep them away like dust from a table. Your ships are crude metal boxes powered by primitive fusion engines. Your weapons are barely capable of scratching the paint on our battle cruisers. What possible threat could you represent to the might of the Zephyrian Empire?" The Emperor stood up from his throne, and his crown began glowing brighter. "I will give you a demonstration of the difference between your species and mine. Guards, execute this human immediately. Let her death serve as my answer to these ridiculous demands." 6 Zephyrian warriors moved toward Kate with weapons that hummed with energy. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device that looked like a simple metal sphere. When she pressed a button on its surface, a blue energy field surrounded her entire body. The guards fired their weapons at her, but the energy beams bounced off the shield harmlessly. Kate began walking toward the exit of the chamber while the guards continued firing at her with no effect. The entire council chamber erupted in shocked voices as nobles jumped up from their floating chairs. "Your empire has existed for 3,000 years, Kate said as she walked. "And in all that time, you have never faced an enemy that fought back with anything approaching your own level of technology. You have grown soft and arrogant. You believe that your size and age make you invincible." She reached the massive doors of the chamber and turned back to face Emperor Vashatar one final time. "Humanity is 800 years old as a spacefaring civilization. We have spent every single one of those years preparing for a war against an enemy exactly like you. We have been watching your empire and learning your weaknesses for decades. We know where every one of your military bases is located. We know the names of your commanders and the specifications of your weapons. We know which of your subject Species hate you, and which of your own people are ready to rebel? The shield around Kate flickered, and she pressed another button on the device. Your 72 hours begin now. Use them wisely. This is the last warning your empire will ever receive from humanity. Kate walked out of the chamber, and the doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder. Emperor Vashatar stood staring at where she had been standing, while his guards continued pointing their useless weapons at empty air. In the silence that followed, one of the younger nobles dared to speak. Your Majesty, should we perhaps consider their demands? If they possess technology that can make personal shields that powerful, perhaps— Silence, the Emperor roared. Ready the fleet. We will crush these humans like insects. Send word to all military commands. Total war against humanity begins immediately. But deep in his heart, Emperor Vashatar felt something he had not experienced in centuries. For the first time since becoming ruler of the galaxy's greatest empire, he felt a tiny seed of doubt about the outcome of a battle. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human flagship Defiant, watching thousands of ships appear out of hyperspace all around his position. Every few seconds, another group of vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel and joined the growing fleet. He had never seen so many human ships gathered in one place before. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez appeared on the main screen from her command ship at the center of the formation. Her face was serious and determined as she addressed the captains of every ship in the fleet. Attention all vessels. Operation Scorched Earth is now active. For 8 years, we have endured attacks from the Zephyrian Empire while we prepared for this moment. Today, we show them what happens when humanity goes to war. Jake looked at his tactical display and counted over 1,500 human ships of all sizes and types. There were massive battle cruisers bristling with weapons alongside small, fast attack ships and everything in between. Some of these vessels looked completely normal, but others had unusual shapes and modifications that hinted at secret technologies. Captain Morrison, came a voice from his communications officer. We are receiving sealed orders from Fleet Command. Jake took the datapad and read the mission briefing. His eyes widened as he realized what humanity was planning to do. This was not going to be a conventional space battle with fleets of ships firing at each other across vast distances. This was going to be something completely different. On the bridge of the research vessel, pioneer Dr. Elena Vasquez was making final preparations for the deployment of her experimental weapons. She had been working on stellar manipulation technology for over a decade in secret laboratories hidden throughout human space. Today, she would find out if her theories about weaponizing stars actually worked. All systems are green, reported her chief engineer Tony Chen. The stellar induction array is ready for deployment. Elena nodded and opened a communication channel. To Admiral Rodriguez. Pioneer reporting ready for stellar target acquisition. We have identified 3 suitable candidate stars in Zephyrian territory for the demonstration. In another part of the fleet, Colonel Pete Davis was briefing his elite special forces unit called Ghost Battalion. These soldiers had been training with experimental stealth technology that could make them completely invisible to Zephyrian sensors. They wore armor that bent light around their bodies and carried weapons that fired projectiles made from compressed dark matter. Remember, Pete told his troops, we hit 47 targets simultaneously across 12 systems. The enemy will not know what hit them until it is too late. By the time they realize they are under attack, every major military installation in the Outer Rim will be destroyed. Commander Amy Chen sat in the captain's chair of her stealth destroyer Wraith as it prepared to infiltrate deep into Zephyrian space. Her ship was coated with a material that absorbed all forms of energy, making it invisible to every type of sensor the Empire used. She could fly right through their defensive lines without being detected. Set course for the Proxima shipyards. She ordered her crew, It is time to introduce the Zephyrians to some new computer viruses that our technicians have been developing. The viruses she carried were not designed to simply shut down enemy computers. Instead, they would rewrite the Programming of Zephyrian ships to make their own weapons target their own vessels. The Empire's greatest strength would become their greatest weakness. President Ryan Carter stood in the war room deep beneath the surface of New Earth, watching the fleet deploy to their attack positions. General Marcus Thompson stood beside him, holding a tablet that displayed intelligence reports from across the galaxy. "Sir," Marcus said, "our deep cover agents are reporting that the Zephyrians are mobilizing their military in response to Ambassador Sullivan's ultimatum. They appear to be planning a massive assault on our core worlds." Ryan nodded grimly. "They still do not understand what they are facing. For 300 years, we have been preparing for exactly this scenario. Every human colony has underground, bunkers, and hidden weapons. Every civilian knows exactly what to do when the invasion begins. The Zephyrians think they are fighting a primitive species that got lucky with some basic space travel technology," Marcus continued. "They have no idea that we have been reverse engineering alien technology and developing our own advanced systems for centuries." On the bridge of the battleship, Thunder Captain Linda Foster was reviewing the specifications for humanity's newest class of warship. These vessels looked like ordinary cruisers from the outside, but contained experimental engines that could manipulate space and time itself. When activated, they could make a ship exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Engineering reports all dimensional drives are online and ready," her first officer reported. "We can phase between realities at your command." Linda smiled grimly. The Zephyrians had spent thousands of years perfecting conventional weapons and shields, but they had never encountered technology that could simply ignore the normal laws of physics. Admiral Rodriguez opened another communication channel to address the entire human fleet one final time before the attack began. "In 1 hour, the 72-hour deadline will expire. The Zephyrian Empire has not responded to our demands, and their fleets are moving to attack human territory. All ships are cleared to engage enemy targets. Remember that we do not fight for conquest or glory. We fight to end this war permanently." Jake Morrison felt his heart racing as he watched the countdown timer on his command console tick down toward 0. In just minutes, the largest military operation in human history would begin. The Zephyrians were about to learn that humanity's warnings were not empty threats. "All hands prepare for combat," he announced over the ship's communication system. "Target. Coordinates are locked in and all weapons are charged. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far." The fleet began moving toward their objectives, and Jake knew that within hours, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift forever. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear and intimidation for millennia, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. The countdown timer reached 0, and humanity unleashed hell across the galaxy. Dr. Elena Vasquez activated her stellar manipulation array and targeted the star that provided light and heat to the Zephyrian mining world of Kepler-7. The massive fusion reactor in space began to destabilize as energy patterns were artificially altered from a distance of several light-years. "Stellar cascade initiated," Elena reported to Admiral Rodriguez. "Estimated time to supernova is 47 minutes. On Kepler-7, millions of Zephyrian workers and their alien slaves continued their daily routine, completely unaware that their sun was about to explode. The mining operation there produced rare metals that were essential for building Zephyrian warships, but in less than an hour, the entire system would be nothing but expanding plasma and radiation. Meanwhile, Colonel Pete Davis and his Ghost Battalion materialized inside 47 different military installations across 12 star systems. The soldiers appeared like phantoms in heavily guarded command centers, weapons depots, and communication facilities. Their stealth technology made them completely invisible until they began firing their dark matter weapons. On the military base at Titan Station, Zephyrian guards were patrolling the corridors when explosive charges began detonating throughout the facility. They never saw the human soldiers who planted the devices because the stealth suits bent light around the soldiers' bodies, making them impossible to detect with normal vision or electronic sensors. "Command center is down," Pete reported over his Encrypted communication system, reactor controls have been destroyed, and the main computer core is offline. Similar reports came in from Ghost Battalion teams across the galaxy. Critical infrastructure was being systematically destroyed, while confused Zephyrian forces fired their weapons at empty air, unable to see their attackers. Commander Amy Chen guided her stealth destroyer Wraith through the defensive perimeter around. Proxima Station, the largest Zephyrian shipyard in the galaxy. Her ship passed within a few hundred meters of massive battle cruisers without triggering any alarms. The absorption coating on her hull made the Wraith completely invisible to every type of sensor the Empire possessed. "We are inside their perimeter," Amy told her crew, deploying viral packages now. Tiny probe ships launched from hidden compartments on the Wraith and attached themselves to dozens of Zephyrian vessels under construction. Each probe contained quantum computer viruses designed to rewrite the programming of enemy ships. Within minutes, the viruses had spread through the entire shipyard network. "Package deployment successful," reported her tactical officer. "Viral propagation is exceeding expected parameters." The viruses immediately began altering the targeting systems of every ship in the facility. When the Zephyrians tried to activate their weapons, they would find that their own ships were shooting at each other instead of at human targets. Captain Jake Morrison watched his tactical display as reports flooded in from across the battlefront. Human forces were striking at targets throughout Zephyrian space with surgical precision, while the enemy struggled to mount any kind of organized response. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we are receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian command ship Emperor's Pride." On the main screen appeared the face of Admiral Zethkar, the supreme commander of all Zephyrian military forces. His blue skin had turned pale, and his large black eyes showed obvious signs of panic and confusion. "Human ships," Zethkar said in broken standard language. "What is the meaning of these attacks? Our sensors show no enemy vessels in the targeted systems. How are you destroying our installations?" Jake smiled coldly and activated his response transmitter. "Admiral Zethkar, you have had 72 hours to comply with our demands. Since your Emperor chose war over peace, you are now experiencing the consequences of that decision." "This is impossible," the Zephyrian admiral protested. "Our intelligence reports indicate that humanity possesses only primitive technology. Your largest ships are smaller than our escort vessels. Your intelligence is 800 years out of date," Jake replied. "While you have been conquering primitive civilizations, humanity has been preparing for this war. Every attack you have made on our colonies has taught us more about your weaknesses." The transmission was suddenly interrupted by an urgent report from the Zephyrians' own command center. "Admiral," came a panicked voice, "the Kepler-7 system has just been destroyed. The star went supernova and eliminated everything within 3 light years." Zethkar's face went completely white as the implications of this news sank in. If humans could destroy entire star systems, then nowhere in the Empire was safe from attack. "Surrender now," Jake continued, "and we will limit our response to military targets. Continue fighting, and we will demonstrate additional capabilities that you have not yet seen." But even as Jake made this offer, he knew the Zephyrians would not accept it. Their culture had been built on the belief that they were the superior species in the galaxy and that other races existed only to serve them. The idea of surrendering to what they considered primitive humans was unthinkable. Admiral Rodriguez received status reports from every part of the operation and was pleased with the results. In less than 2 hours, humanity had eliminated more enemy infrastructure than the Zephyrians had destroyed during 8 years of war. "Ma'am," her intelligence officer reported, "we are detecting massive fleet movements throughout Zephyrian space. They appear to be recalling ships from frontier sectors to defend their core worlds." "Excellent," Lisa replied. "That means they are taking us seriously now. Begin Phase 2 of the operation." Phase 2 involved revealing some of humanity's other hidden technologies to the Empire. Captain Linda Foster activated the dimensional drives on her battleship Thunder, and watched as the vessel began existing in multiple realities simultaneously. "Dimensional phase shift complete," her engineer reported. "We are now operating in 6 different dimensional layers. This meant that Zephyrian weapons could only hit 1/6 of the ship at any given time, while thunder could fire from all dimensions at once. The technological advantage was so overwhelming that it was almost unfair." General Marcus Thompson stood in the war room watching intelligence reports flow in from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire was beginning to panic as they realized the scope of what they were facing. "Sir," one of his analysts reported, "intercepted communications indicate that the Zephyrians are requesting emergency military aid from their allies in the Andorian coalition." Marcus smiled grimly. "Send a message to the Androians. Inform them that any species that provides military assistance to the Zephyrian Empire will be considered an enemy of humanity. Make sure they understand that we have been monitoring their activities as well." The message was clear. Humanity had been preparing for this war much longer than anyone realized, and they had contingency plans for every possible scenario. Emperor Vashishtar paced back and forth in his throne room as reports of disaster continued to pour in from across his empire. In just 6 hours, humanity had destroyed or disabled military installations in over 100 star systems. Worse yet, his intelligence officers still could not explain how the attacks were being carried out. "Your Majesty," said his chief military advisor, Admiral Kothron, "our forces are reporting that enemy soldiers are appearing inside secure facilities without triggering any alarms. They seem to be able to become invisible at will." "Impossible." The Emperor roared. "No species possesses technology that advanced. Our sensors can detect ships moving faster than light from halfway across the galaxy." But even as he spoke, Vashishtar knew that something had gone terribly wrong with his understanding of human capabilities. The creatures he had dismissed as primitive, insects, were demonstrating technologies that surpassed anything in the Zephyrian arsenal. On the mining world of Centauri, Prime panic was spreading through the population as news of the Kepler-7 supernova reached them. Zephyrian civilians, who had lived their entire lives believing their empire was invincible, suddenly realized they might be next. Senator Claire Williams materialized in the center of the main mining complex, surrounded by 20 heavily armed human soldiers. The Zephyrian guards immediately raised their weapons, but Claire held up her hand in a gesture of peace. "I am Senator Claire Williams, representing the United Human Colonies," she announced through her translation device. "We are not here to harm civilian populations. We are here to offer freedom to the alien species that have been enslaved by the Zephyrian Empire." The mining complex contained thousands of workers from dozens of different species that had been conquered by the Zephyrians. Over the centuries, most of them had never seen a human before, but they had heard rumors about the new war that was spreading across the galaxy. "For too long you have labored under Zephyrian oppression," Claire continued. "Today, humanity offers you the chance to fight for your own freedom. Join with us, and we will provide you with weapons and training to liberate your home worlds." A massive creature with 6 arms and crystalline skin stepped forward from the crowd of workers. It was a Vortan, one of the first species conquered by the Empire 300 years ago. "Human," the Vortan said in a voice that sounded like grinding stone. "How do we know you will not simply replace the Zephyrians as our new masters?" Claire smiled and activated a holographic projector that showed images of various alien species living freely in human-controlled territory. "These are refugees from Zephyrian oppression who have been living in human colonies for decades." She explained they work alongside humans as equals, and many have chosen to serve in our military forces. "We do not conquer other species. We liberate them." Meanwhile, Captain Tony Lopez was leading a joint human and alien fleet toward the slave mining operations in the Titan Nebula. His battlecruiser Retribution had been modified with new weapons. systems that could disrupt Zephyrian shields, while his alien allies provided detailed intelligence about enemy defensive positions. Captain reported his tactical officer, the Hydran amphibious assault ships are in position for the attack on the orbital mining platforms. The Hydrans were an aquatic species that the Zephyrians had enslaved to work in underwater mining operations throughout the galaxy. When humanity made contact with them, they immediately volunteered to fight against their oppressors, using their natural ability to operate in liquid environments. All ships attack Formation Delta, Tony ordered. Remember that our primary objective is liberating the workers, not destroying the facilities. The combined fleet struck the mining operation like a hurricane. Hydran assault troops flooded the underwater sections of the mining complex, while human soldiers secured the surface installations. The Zephyrian guards were completely overwhelmed by the coordinated assault. Dr. Alex Turner had spent years secretly developing relationships with alien scientists and engineers throughout the Empire. When the war began, these contacts became invaluable sources of intelligence and technology. Doctor said his Klaxon research partner, the Hive Mind has agreed to provide humanity with the location of every secret Zephyrian research facility in the Outer Rim. The Klaxons were an insectoid species with a collective intelligence that allowed them to share information instantly across vast distances. The Zephyrians had tried to use this ability for their own purposes, but had never understood how it actually worked. Excellent, Alex replied. Transmit the coordinates to our fleet commanders immediately. Some of those facilities contain experimental weapons that we need to capture before the Zephyrians can deploy them. Back on Nexus Prime. Emperor Vashitar was discovering that his own military commanders were beginning to question his decisions. Several fleet admirals had suggested negotiating with humanity before the situation became even worse. Your Majesty, said Admiral Bextar, perhaps we should consider the human demands. Our losses are mounting rapidly, and we still do not understand their full capabilities. The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury as he glared at his subordinate. The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with inferior species, he declared. We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years, and we will not be dictated to by creatures that only learned to build starships 800 years ago. But privately, Vashitar was beginning to worry about the future of his civilization. Intelligence reports indicated that 17 different subject species had launched rebellions against imperial rule in the past 12 hours. Worse yet, several Zephyrian colonies had declared independence rather than continue fighting a war they believed was unwinnable. Major Samantha Brooks was leading human ground forces alongside Hydran amphibious troops as they established the first permanent human military base in former Empire territory. The base was located on a water world that the Hydrans had reclaimed from Zephyrian control. Major reported her communications officer, we are receiving surrender offers from Zephyrian forces on 6 different worlds in this sector. Samantha nodded grimly. Accept their surrenders, but keep them under close guard. Make sure they understand that any attempt to resume fighting will result in immediate and overwhelming retaliation. The psychological impact of humanity's initial attacks was spreading throughout the Empire faster than the physical damage. Zephyrian military units that had never seen combat against humans were surrendering rather than face the same fate as their destroyed colleagues. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of her flagship, monitoring the progress of operations across multiple sectors simultaneously. The first phase of humanity's plan was succeeding beyond their most optimistic projections. Admiral, her intelligence officer reported, intercepted communications indicate that the Zephyrian government is beginning to fracture. Several planetary governors are refusing to follow orders from Nexus Prime. Good, Lisa replied. Fear and confusion are our allies now. The more the Empire doubts itself, the easier our job becomes. Admiral Kevin Walsh commanded the largest siege fleet in human history as it surrounded the core worlds of the Zephyrian Empire. 2,000 human ships and 5,000 allied vessels from liberated species formed an impenetrable blockade. Around 17 star systems, nothing could get in or out without his permission. Admiral reported his chief of staff, "All hyperspace jump points have been secured. The Empire's core worlds are completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy." Kevin nodded as he studied the tactical display showing Zephyrian fleet movements within the blockaded zone. The enemy had pulled back their remaining forces to defend their most important worlds, but they were trapped like animals in a cage. "Begin the broadcast," he ordered. Throughout the besieged systems, every communication device suddenly activated with a message from humanity. The transmission bypassed all Zephyrian security systems and appeared on screens in government buildings, military bases, and civilian homes. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," came the voice of President Ryan Carter. "Your government has chosen war over peace, and your military continues to attack innocent human colonies. As a result, your core worlds are now under siege. No supplies will reach you until your leaders agree to our terms." On the planet, Zephyr Prime, billions of civilians watched in shock as human ships appeared in orbit around their world. These were not the primitive vessels their government had described, but sleek advanced warships that dwarfed anything in the Imperial fleet. Captain Linda Foster piloted her experimental ship Phoenix as it demonstrated humanity's most secret technology. The vessel could jump between dimensions, allowing it to appear anywhere in the galaxy without traveling through normal space. "Initiating dimensional jump," Linda announced to her crew as reality around the ship began to shift and bend. The Phoenix materialized inside the most secure military facility on Nexus Prime, appearing in a chamber that was supposed to be impossible to reach. Zephyrian security forces fired their weapons at the ship, but the energy beams passed through it harmlessly as Linda shifted the vessel between dimensional phases. "This is Captain Linda Foster of the human ship Phoenix," she broadcast on all frequencies. "As you can see, your most secure locations offer no protection against our technology. Surrender now or face the consequences." The psychological impact of her demonstration spread throughout the Empire like wildfire. If humans could appear anywhere at will, then no Zephyrian leader was safe from assassination or capture. Commander Robert Hayes had spent months preparing psychological warfare campaigns designed to destroy Zephyrian morale from within. His team broadcast testimonies from liberated alien species throughout Empire territory, showing the truth about Imperial oppression. "Citizens of the Empire," came the voice of a Hydran refugee, "for 200 years my people were forced to work in underwater mines while Zephyrian overseers beat us for not meeting impossible quotas. We watched our children die from diseases that could have been cured, but the Empire considered medical care too expensive for slaves." Similar testimonies from dozens of species flooded Zephyrian communication networks. Many Imperial citizens were learning about their government's crimes for the first time, and civil unrest began erupting on dozens of worlds. Colonel Maria Santos led surgical strikes against Empire command structures while carefully avoiding civilian targets. Her forces would appear inside military headquarters, eliminate the command staff, and then disappear before reinforcements could arrive. "Target neutralized," Maria reported after another successful raid. "General Vaktar and his entire staff have been captured. Zephyrian forces in the Rigel sector are now leaderless." The pattern was repeated across the Empire as human special forces systematically eliminated military leadership while leaving civilian infrastructure intact. The message was clear. Humanity could destroy everything but chose to show restraint. His flagship, Admiral Zethkar, stared at reports of military disasters flooding in from every part of the Empire. In just 3 days, humanity had destroyed or captured over half of the Imperial fleet without losing a single ship in return. "Sir," his communications officer announced nervously, "we are receiving another transmission from the human fleet." "Captain." Jake Morrison appeared on the main screen, wearing the calm expression of someone who held all the advantages in a conflict. "Admiral Zethkar." Jake said. "Your empire is finished. Your core worlds are under siege. Your military commands have been eliminated and your subject species are in open rebellion. How many more of your people must die before you accept reality?" "Human," Zethkar replied with what little dignity he had left. "The Zephyrian Empire has existed for 3 millennia. We will not surrender to a species of primitive barbarians regardless of what tricks you have learned." Jake's expression hardened, and his voice became cold as ice. "Admiral, we are not barbarians. Barbarians would have simply destroyed your worlds from a distance. We have shown restraint by offering you the chance to surrender. But our patience is not unlimited." The transmission ended, and Zethkar found himself staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked in silence as they monitored the steady collapse of everything they had believed in. Dr. Elena Vasquez activated her stellar manipulation array, once again targeting 3 more star systems simultaneously. This time, she did not intend to destroy the stars, but simply to demonstrate that she could do so at any moment. "Stellar destabilization initiated," she reported. "All 3 target stars are now showing signs of critical instability. I can reverse the process or allow them to go supernova at your command." The message was transmitted directly to Emperor Vashatar, along with detailed sensor readings showing exactly what was happening to the stars that provided light and heat to millions of Zephyrian citizens. Fleet Commander Nick Turner led an armada of advanced human warships as they deployed gravitational manipulation weapons against the remaining Imperial fleet. The devices could create artificial black holes that would tear enemy ships apart at the molecular level. "Gravity distortion fields activated," Nick announced. "Enemy ships are being pulled out of formation. The Zephyrian vessels found themselves helpless against forces that could manipulate the fundamental structure of space itself. Their shields and armor were useless against weapons that attacked the very fabric of reality." On Nexus Prime, Emperor Vashatar sat alone in his throne room, contemplating the destruction of everything he had spent his life building. Reports indicated that over 200 worlds had declared independence from the Empire in the past week. "Your Majesty," came the voice of his last remaining advisor, "the humans are requesting one final meeting. They say they will discuss terms for ending the war." Vashatar closed his eyes and tried to imagine a future where the Zephyrian Empire still existed. But every scenario ended with the complete destruction of his civilization at the hands of humanity. "Tell them," he said quietly, "that I will meet with their representative, but I will not grovel before creatures I still consider inferior to my species." The advisor bowed and left the chamber while Vashatar continued sitting alone on his throne. Outside his windows, he could see human ships filling the sky above his capital city like stars that had fallen too close to the ground. The final assault on Nexus Prime began at dawn, as Admiral Lisa Rodriguez coordinated the largest military operation in galactic history. 2,000 human ships supported by 10,000 allied vessels from dozens of liberated species moved into attack formation around the Zephyrian capital world. "All ships report ready," announced her tactical officer. "Weapon systems are charged and dimensional drives are online." Lisa opened a communication channel to address the entire combined fleet. "This is Admiral Rodriguez to all vessels. Today we end 3,000 years of Zephyrian oppression. Remember that our goal is not revenge, but justice. We fight to ensure that no species will ever again suffer under Imperial tyranny." Emperor Vashatar had activated every defensive system on his home world, including ancient planetary shields that had not been used in over 1,000 years. Massive orbital platforms, bristling with weapons, surrounded Nexus Prime, while the last remnants of the Imperial fleet prepared for their final battle. "Your Majesty," reported his military commander, "all defensive positions are manned and ready. The planetary shields can withstand any conventional attack." But Vashtar had studied the reports of human capabilities and knew that conventional weapons were not what his empire faced. These creatures had demonstrated technologies that seemed to ignore the normal laws of physics. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant as it led the human fleet toward the planet's defensive perimeter. His ship had been equipped with experimental weapons that could manipulate matter at the quantum level, turning any substance into pure energy. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "we are in range of the orbital platforms. Their shields are at maximum power. Target the nearest platform with quantum disruptors," Jake ordered. "Let us show them what happens when matter meets antimatter." The beam that struck the orbital platform did not explode in the traditional sense. Instead, the entire structure simply ceased to exist as its atoms were converted directly into energy. Where a massive weapons platform had been floating in space, there was now only empty vacuum. Fleet Commander Nick Turner activated the gravitational manipulation systems on his battle group and watched as artificial black holes began forming around Zephyrian defensive positions. The enemy ships found themselves being pulled toward points in space where gravity was so intense that not even light could escape. "Gravity wells are stable," Nick reported. "Enemy vessels are being drawn out of their defensive formations." The Zephyrian pilots tried desperately to escape, but their engines were not powerful enough to overcome the artificial gravity fields. One by one, Imperial ships were crushed into impossibly dense points of matter before disappearing entirely. Captain Linda Foster phased her ship Phoenix through multiple dimensions simultaneously as she approached the planetary shield generator. The massive installation was buried deep underground and protected by layers of armor that could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. "Dimensional phase shift complete," Linda announced. "We are now existing in 7 different realities at once." She fired the Phoenix's main weapon, which existed in all 7 dimensions simultaneously. The beam passed through the planetary shields as if they were not there and struck the generator complex with devastating effect. "Shield generator is offline," reported her tactical officer. "Planetary defenses are down." Throughout the battle, Allied alien forces fought alongside human ships with a fury born from centuries of oppression. Hydran assault ships flooded Zephyrian positions, while Klaxon fighters used their hive mind coordination to outmaneuver enemy squadrons. Dr. Alex Turner worked with teams of liberated alien scientists to deploy new technologies that had been developed in secret during years of Imperial occupation. The Vortans used sonic weapons that could shatter Zephyrian armor, while the crystalline beings channeled energy directly through their bodies. "Doctor," his Klaxon partner announced, "the hive mind reports that all secondary targets have been eliminated. Zephyrian command and control systems are completely offline." On the surface of Nexus Prime, Major Samantha Brooks led the first human ground forces to set foot on the Zephyrian home world. Her soldiers moved through the capital city with weapons that fired beams of compressed dark matter capable of penetrating any known armor. "This is Major Brooks to all units," she broadcast. "Remember that we are here to capture the Imperial leadership, not to harm civilians. Any Zephyrian who surrenders will be treated according to galactic conventions." But resistance was surprisingly light as many Imperial soldiers threw down their weapons rather than face human forces. Years of propaganda about primitive humans had not prepared them for the reality of fighting an enemy with overwhelming technological superiority. Emperor Vashatar stood in his throne room watching through the windows as human ships filled the sky above his palace. The ancient building shook as explosions echoed through the city, but he refused to flee to the underground bunkers. "Your Majesty," his last remaining guard captain urged, "we must evacuate immediately. The humans will be here within minutes." "No," Vashatar replied firmly. "I am the Emperor of the galaxy's greatest civilization. I will not run and hide like a frightened animal." The massive doors of the throne room exploded inward as human soldiers in advanced combat armor entered the chamber. Their weapons were aimed directly at the Emperor, but they did not fire immediately. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez walked into the room, behind her soldiers, and looked up at the alien ruler who had caused so much suffering throughout the galaxy. She was smaller than any Zephyrian, but her presence filled the chamber with authority. "Emperor Vashitar," Lisa said in a voice that carried across the vast space, "by the authority of the United Human Colonies and the Allied Liberation Forces, I place you under arrest for crimes against sentient species." The Emperor descended from his throne slowly, his 6 arms spread wide in a gesture that might have been surrender or defiance. "Human," he said with as much dignity as he could manage, "you may have destroyed my empire, but you have not broken my spirit. I am still the rightful ruler of 800 star systems." Lisa looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Your empire no longer exists," she replied quietly. 300 worlds have declared independence in the past week. Your military has surrendered or been destroyed. Your subject species are free for the first time in centuries. Vashitar's large black eyes widened as the full reality of his situation finally penetrated his consciousness. The civilization that had dominated the galaxy for 3 millennia had been brought to its knees in less than 2 weeks by a species he had considered primitive. "How?" he whispered. "How did creatures like you develop such advanced technology?" Lisa smiled grimly and gestured toward the human soldiers who surrounded the fallen emperor. "We learned from you," she said. "Every attack you made on our colonies taught us more about your weaknesses. Every species you oppressed became our ally. Every act of cruelty you committed strengthened our resolve to see you defeated." President Ryan Carter appeared on communication screens throughout the former Zephyrian Empire as he addressed the citizens of hundreds of worlds. "People of the galaxy," he announced, "today marks the end of the Zephyrian Empire and the beginning of a new era of freedom and cooperation among all species. Humanity offers friendship and alliance to any civilization that chooses peace over conquest." In the days following the fall of Nexus Prime, the true scope of the Zephyrian Empire's collapse became clear. Over 400 star systems had declared independence from imperial rule, while another 200 had requested protection from the human fleet. The civilization that had dominated the galaxy for 3,000 years had been reduced to ash in just 2 weeks. Ambassador Kate Sullivan stood in the same council chamber where she had delivered humanity's ultimatum, but now the massive hall was filled with representatives from dozens of species rather than arrogant Zephyrian nobles. The floating chairs had been replaced with simple tables arranged in a circle to emphasize equality among all participants. "The purpose of this assembly," Kate announced, "is to establish a new galactic government based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced subjugation. Every species will have an equal voice regardless of their size or technological level." A Hydran delegate raised one of his webbed hands to speak. "Ambassador Sullivan," he said through his translation device, "the Hydran people are grateful for our liberation, but we must ask what guarantees we have that humanity will not simply replace the Zephyrians as our new masters." Kate activated a holographic display that showed the human proposal for galactic governance. Under this system, no single species will have the power to dominate others. Decisions will be made by majority vote with safeguards to protect minority rights. Humanity pledges to reduce our military forces and share our advanced technology with all member civilizations. The former slave species looked at each other in amazement. Never in their recorded history had a conquering power offered to voluntarily limit their own authority. On the world of Titan 7, Dr. Alex Turner worked with teams of alien scientists to catalog the advanced technologies that the Zephyrians had been hoarding for centuries. The Imperial archives contained scientific discoveries from dozens of conquered civilizations that had been suppressed to maintain Zephyrian technological superiority. Dr. Hisvortan colleague said excitedly, "We have found the gravitational manipulation theories that our people developed 400 years ago. The Zephyrians confiscated all our research and claimed it was too dangerous for inferior species to possess. Alex nodded grimly as he reviewed file after file of stolen knowledge. The Empire's greatest crime was not the slavery or the conquest. He said, it was the deliberate suppression of scientific progress throughout the galaxy. Imagine how advanced our civilizations might have become if we had been allowed to share knowledge freely. President Ryan Carter stood in his office on New Earth reviewing reports from across the former empire. The humanitarian crisis was enormous, as billions of beings who had lived under oppression for generations struggled to adapt to freedom. Sir, his chief of staff reported, we have refugee requests from over 600 worlds. Many of these species have never governed themselves and are asking for human assistance in establishing democratic institutions. Ryan rubbed his temples as he contemplated the enormous responsibility that humanity had taken on. Send aid missions to every world that requests help, he ordered, but make sure our people understand that they are advisors, not rulers. These species must learn to govern themselves. General Marcus Thompson was coordinating the dismantling of Zephyrian military installations throughout the galaxy. Many of the Empire's weapons were so advanced that they posed a threat to entire star systems if they fell into the wrong hands. General, his aide reported, we have discovered a weapons research facility on Darkstar Station that was developing technology to destabilize entire galactic regions. The scientists there were working on devices that could collapse hyperspace lanes. Marcus felt a chill as he realized how close the galaxy had come to even greater catastrophe. Secure all research materials and transfer the scientists to human custody, he ordered. Some knowledge is too dangerous to exist. Emperor Vashatar sat in a detention cell aboard the human prison ship Justice, staring at walls that seemed to mock his former power. He had been the absolute ruler of the galaxy's greatest empire, and now he could not even control when the lights in his cell turned on or off. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez visited him to discuss the terms of his trial for crimes against sentient species. You will be given a fair trial with legal representation, she told him, something your victims never received. Vashatar looked up at her with eyes that held a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. Why, he asked, why did your species show mercy to those who would have shown you none? We would have enslaved or exterminated every human in the galaxy if we had won this war. Lisa considered his question carefully before answering. Because we are not you, she said simply. We fight to end wars, not to perpetuate them. Justice serves the future, not the past. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the human fleet as it began the massive task of rebuilding galactic civilization. Former Zephyrian worlds needed new governments while liberated species required assistance in reclaiming their home systems. Captain, his communications officer announced, we are receiving a distress call from the Centauri system. Zephyrian loyalists have seized control of the orbital stations and are threatening to bombard the planet. Jake sighed as he realized that defeating the Empire had been only the beginning of humanity's challenges. Set course for Centauri, he ordered. It seems some Zephyrians have not yet learned that their empire is finished. Dr. Elena Vasquez was working to develop new technologies that could repair the environmental damage caused by centuries of imperial exploitation. Many worlds had been strip-mined or polluted beyond normal recovery methods. We can use stellar manipulation techniques to accelerate natural healing processes, she explained to a gathering of alien environmental scientists. But it will take decades to undo the damage the Empire caused. On his ship, Phoenix Captain Linda Foster was exploring former Imperial territory, searching for hidden research facilities and secret prisons. The Zephyrians had been masters at concealing their most shameful activities. Captain, her scanner operator, reported we are detecting artificial structures on the supposedly uninhabited world of Kepler-12. The configurations match Imperial prison designs. Linda felt her stomach tighten as she realized they had found another concentration camp. "Prepare rescue teams," she ordered, "and send word to the nearest hospital ship. We may be about to discover survivors who have been imprisoned for decades." Commander Robert Hayes was working with former Imperial citizens to help them understand the reality of what their government had done in their name. Many Zephyrians had genuinely believed the propaganda about inferior species and necessary conquest. "The truth is difficult to accept," he told a gathering of Zephyrian civilians, "but you must understand the suffering your empire caused if you hope to build a better future." Some Zephyrians wept as they watched testimonies from torture victims and slave laborers. Others became angry and insisted the recordings must be fabricated by human propaganda. Senator Claire Williams established refugee camps on dozens of worlds to house the millions of beings displaced by the Empire's collapse. Former slaves needed medical care and education, while Zephyrian civilians required protection from species seeking revenge. "Our goal is reconciliation, not retribution," she told her staff. "The cycle of violence must end with us, or we will have accomplished nothing." But even as humanity worked to build a better galaxy, the memory of the Zephyrian Empire's destruction served as a warning to any species that might consider following the same path of conquest and oppression. 5 years after the fall of the Zephyrian Empire, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Galactic Cooperation Council met regularly on the neutral world of Haven, where representatives from over 300 species worked together to solve problems that had once seemed impossible. Ambassador Kate Sullivan served as the first human galactic coordinator, a position that rotated among different species every few years to prevent any single civilization from gaining too much power. She stood before the assembled delegates as they prepared to address the final legal proceedings against the former Imperial leadership. "Today we conclude the trials that began with the arrest of Emperor Vashitar and his inner circle," Kate announced. "Justice has been served according to the laws we have established together as free civilizations." The trials had taken years to complete as investigators documented 3 millennia of crimes against sentient species. The evidence filled entire databases with testimonies from billions of victims and their descendants. Vashitar himself had been sentenced to life imprisonment on a remote world where he would spend his remaining years contemplating the destruction he had caused. Many of his former subjects had called for his execution, but the council had voted for justice rather than revenge. Dr. Alex Turner had become the director of the Galactic Science Consortium, where researchers from every member species worked together to advance knowledge for the benefit of all civilizations. The progress achieved in just 5 years exceeded what had been accomplished during centuries of imperial rule. The cooperation we see today proves that diversity of thought leads to innovation. Alex told a gathering of young scientists from dozens of worlds, "When different species share knowledge freely, we all become stronger." His laboratories had developed new medical treatments that saved millions of lives, while engineering projects restored damaged ecosystems throughout the galaxy. The technologies that humanity had revealed during the war were now being used to heal rather than destroy. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the Galactic Peacekeeping Fleet, which included ships and crews from every member civilization. Their mission was to protect developing species and prevent the rise of new empires that might threaten galactic peace. "Sir," his Hydran first officer reported, "we are receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim. A militant faction of former Zephyrian military officers has established a base on the world of Terminus and is planning attacks on civilian targets." Jake nodded grimly as he studied the tactical display. Even 5 years after their defeat, some Zephyrians refused to accept the new galactic order and continued fighting a war that had already been lost. "Set course for Terminus," he ordered. "It seems we need to remind these remnants why their empire fell in the first place." The peacekeeping fleet included advanced human warships alongside vessels from allied species, each contributing their unique capabilities to the common defense. Vortan's sonic cruisers worked with Klaxon fighter swarms, while Hydran assault ships provided amphibious capabilities. President Ryan Carter had stepped down from office after serving 2 terms and was now working with the Galactic Council to establish universities throughout former Imperial territory. Education was considered essential for preventing future conflicts between species. Knowledge shared freely prevents the fear and misunderstanding that leads to war. He told a graduating class of young beings from 17 different worlds, "You are the generation that will ensure peace endures." These students would return to their home worlds as teachers and scientists, carrying with them the ideals of cooperation and mutual respect that had replaced imperial oppression. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez had retired from military service to write a comprehensive history of the war that would serve as both a record of events and a warning to future generations. Her book, The Final Warning, became required reading in schools throughout the galaxy. Humanity did not seek war with the Zephyrian Empire, she wrote, "But when diplomacy failed, we demonstrated the consequences of choosing conquest over cooperation. The Empire's destruction was not the result of human aggression, but of imperial arrogance and cruelty." The former slave species had established their own governments and were rebuilding civilizations that had been suppressed for centuries. The Hydrans created underwater cities that served as centers of art and culture, while the Vortans developed crystal technologies that revolutionized interstellar communication. General Marcus Thompson worked with intelligence agencies from multiple species to monitor potential threats to galactic stability. The network they had built could detect the early signs of militaristic expansion before it became a serious danger. "The key to preventing future wars," Marcus explained to his staff, "is identifying aggressive tendencies early and addressing them through diplomatic pressure and economic incentives rather than waiting until military action becomes necessary." Dr. A. Elena Vasquez led efforts to develop new defensive technologies that could protect entire star systems from attack. Her work focused on creating shields and detection networks that would make surprise assaults impossible. "The goal is not to build better weapons," she told her research team, "but to make warfare itself obsolete by removing any advantage that aggressive species might hope to gain." On Nexus Prime, the former Imperial capital had been transformed into a memorial dedicated to the victims of Zephyrian oppression. The crystal halls where nobles had once plotted conquest now displayed artifacts and testimonies from the civilizations they had destroyed. Commander Amy Chen served as the memorial's director, ensuring that future generations would remember the cost of unchecked imperial ambition. "We preserve these memories not to promote hatred," she told visitors, "but to honor those who suffered and to ensure that such suffering never occurs again." The Zephyrian species itself had undergone a dramatic transformation as younger generations rejected the supremacist ideology of their ancestors. Many young Zephyrians worked alongside humans and other species to repair the damage their empire had caused. Captain Linda Foster used her dimensional jumping technology to explore previously unknown regions of the galaxy, searching for new civilizations that might benefit from contact with the Galactic Cooperation Council. "Each new species we encounter brings unique perspectives and capabilities," she reported after returning from a successful first contact mission. "The galaxy becomes richer through diversity rather than domination." The memorial services for those who had died during the Imperial period were attended by beings from hundreds of worlds as the galaxy collectively mourned the victims of 3 millennia of oppression. Kate Sullivan delivered the final address at the largest memorial gathering ever held. "Today we remember not just those who died under Imperial rule, but also those who lived to see freedom." She said, "The greatest honor we can give to their memory is to ensure that the galaxy remains a place where all species can prosper in peace." The Crowd that listened to her words included former slaves and former masters, former enemies, and new allies, all united in their commitment to building a better future. As the ceremony concluded, beings from across the galaxy looked up at the stars, knowing that, for the first time in millennia, those distant suns shone on worlds where freedom and cooperation had replaced fear and oppression. The Zephyrian Empire had been reduced to ash, but from those ashes had grown something far greater than any single civilization could have achieved alone. Humanity's final warning had been heeded, and the galaxy was finally at peace.